Awesome. Thank you for tuning in.
Hey, what's up, Hilo News family? Welcome to another episode of the Can We Talk podcast, our show where we talk to dope people in the community doing dope things, and today is no different. I'm really excited to have our next guest on. I actually went to this exhibit. It's on Miami Beach, and it is amazing. It is about the Harlem Renaissance, and it's everything you need to know. I have the people who created and helped curate it, and they're going to tell you why you need to get your butt down to Miami Beach, go to this exhibit, and experience this amazing artwork that is down there. So without further ado, I would love to bring my guests onto the show. I have Christopher Norwood and Shawn Christian. Hey guys, welcome to Hilo News Can We Talk podcast.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Thank you.
That's what's up. Thank you guys for joining us. You know, here on the Can We Talk podcast, we're all about sharing things that are going on in the community. And when I came to this exhibit and I found out about it through our friend Yvette Harris, I was like, yo, we got to have a conversation about this on the podcast and let people know all the nuts and bolts and what went on behind the scenes, but really why they should be there. And so
Absolutely.
I want to kick it off with you, Chris, because you're the mastermind behind all of this. And if people don't know, you're the founder of Hampton Art Lovers. You've been giving us dope Black art experiences here in South Florida for some time now. So tell me, what was the reason for this exhibit? What was the idea of like, let's bring the Harlem Renaissance from this angle?
Well, thank you for that introduction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not a creator of art. Our people are the originators of these art pieces. But you know, as a curator, you know, you're just trying to piece it together in a way that you present it so that it can digest and maybe tell a story of some sort. So what really brought me to wanting to do this type of show, Silhouettes is the name of the show, Image and Word in the Harlem Renaissance, is because I've always felt that, well, not always, I've come to feel that the Harlem Renaissance was very much a literary movement. And as such, the art and culture has surrounded that and grew out of that. And so the visual arts played a key role in the evolution of the Harlem Renaissance. And it was these collaborations between the writers and the visual artists in the form of book covers and illustrations that was always very interesting to me, because when you look at the books of some of these, or you look at the covers of some of these books, the art is amazing. And when you open up the books and you see illustrations, you know, it's never going to be a lot of them, but when the ones that you do see, they're just amazing pieces of art in and of itself on its own. And when you factor in the fact that, you know, artists during that time period, African-American artists during that time period, could not be seen in galleries and museums on a wide scale because of Jim Crow and because of racism and things of that nature, you know, those books were arguably the art gallery and the museum for these artists. It was a canvas in and of itself. And so that's why in developing this show, it was very important that we have someone like Dr. Shawn Christian, a published author of books relating to the Harlem Renaissance, to be a part of this curatorial team, because although my eye is to the visual, his eye is to the literary, and I needed to position those books so that they were grounded in the show in an academic way. And so Dr. Christian is the chair of the English department at Florida International University, a published author. So it was an honor to have him help me present this to all of the community and especially your listeners so that they can come out and see it.
No, definitely. And that's a great segue to introduce Dr. Shawn Christian. He said, just call me Shawn, but I'm going to give you your things,
I
okay?
appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yeah.
And Dr. Shawn, tell us, what was your creative process and what Chris said, like grounding this? Because as I've went through the exhibit, the relationship with the words and the image, it just flows and it immerses you into that time. So tell us
Yeah.
more about that process for you.
Well, in an ironic way, we were modeling our process off of what the artists themselves did during the period, right? So a lot of these writers and visual artists, Aaron Douglas and let's say Langston Hughes or Aaron Douglas and James Weldon Johnson were collaborating. So Chris and I were doing a version of that ourselves. We came together. He brought his knowledge of the visual arts to the table, and I brought my knowledge of the books in the period. And we kind of talked through the themes. We actually sat in the Wolfsonian's archives and just sat there and looked at books for a couple of hours to really think about what should go in this exhibit. And then he tapped his network to identify all of this artwork that's out there on loan from a couple of different museums, as well as Wolfsonian. I think that process was iterative, right? We stumble across things that we didn't know sometimes, or one of us went deep into a conversation about a text or a painting, let's say, and we thought about themes, we thought about images, we thought about what would resonate, not just in terms of capturing the history of the Harlem Renaissance, but making it relevant for folks here in South Florida.
I love it. And, like I said, as someone who went through the exhibit, it's something that you have to see. And of course, you want people to come. But can you guys explain to my audience what they're going to expect when they come to this exhibit? Like, what is that experience going to be like for them?
Well, first of all, you are going to learn a little bit about, or a lot of bit about, African American history. Because our history is taught through the arts. It's taught through our music. It's taught through our poetry. And so you're going to get a lot about the history of African Americans up until the 1940s. Our show is focused on the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. You're going to learn about the great Aaron Douglas, the preeminent artist of the time period. And you're also going to learn about Alain Locke in his book, The New Negro, and how it grounded all of the art and intellect of the Harlem Renaissance. You're going to learn about people like Vino Rice. You're going to learn about artists like Lois Millau Jones. You're going to learn about the way in which the Harlem Renaissance was not really just about Harlem. I mean, Harlem is just it's in New York City, so it sometimes is overstated. But the New Negro movement, which is really what this this time period is about, and sometimes self-described. The term Harlem Renaissance came about much later.
Really?
As a descriptor. Yes. And maybe Shawn could speak a little bit about the term Harlem Renaissance and how it was a later sort of version of this time period.
Say that one more time, Chris, because I missed part of it.
Oh, we're just making reference to the fact that the Harlem Renaissance was a term created after this time period, that it was really about this new Negro.
Yes.
And the movement attached to that.
Yeah. So if you think back to just after Reconstruction, the development of the African American presence in Congress, the first elected officials, it really gave birth to this idea of the new Negro, and that really opened up a lot of possibilities for people to identify themselves not only in terms of their racial pride, but in terms of their relationship as citizens of the United States. And from that kind of projection went a dynamic interest in the kind of cultural explosion and expression of Black people. One of the things that's important for the Harlem Renaissance, of course, is the development of film. And Birth of a Nation, that was published in 1915, really cemented a lot of complicated and racist stereotypes for Black people. And the writers and the artists and the musicians were really invested in changing that perspective. And so they said, let's create our art as a response to that, but also to celebrate who we are and what we do.
And Chris, that was an amazing point about the Harlem Renaissance and the new Negro era. And a lot of people don't understand that point about it. Dr. Shawn, can you explain how that all came to be, like the naming and how we all know the Harlem Renaissance today?
Absolutely. If you think back to the end of Reconstruction, it's a period where African Americans were coming into Congress for the first time as elected officials. And that brought about a different perspective about African Americans' relationship to the nation, but also their sense of racial pride. And from that, especially entering World War I, African Americans were like, look, let's make it hard to go back. Let's make sure we focus on the future. We dig deep into our cultural roots and our artistic sensibilities. And so the Harlem Renaissance was birthed in that context, not to mention the Great Migration.
No, definitely. And Dr. Shawn, Chris said that you have writings and work that you've done around this. Can you tell us more about the work that you've done?
Sure. I just recently published an essay on the Harlem Renaissance in an edited volume from Cambridge Press, but I also have a book entitled The Harlem Renaissance and the New Negro Reader. It's a great volume there. Yeah, thank you for showing that. That really captures the way that the print culture in the period, the newspapers, the anthologies, the books were focused on by the writers to promote reading in African-American context, right? The Harlem Renaissance is definitely a period where there was a lot of interracial connection, but these writers were also focused on building a kind of literary audience in Black communities across the country. So that's what my book talks about.
Oh, that's dope. And you guys got to make sure you check that out. I wanted to give you some love on the screen. I know you have a hard stop, Dr. Shawn. How can people follow you and connect with you on a social?
I have a Instagram and a Twitter account, but I'm not remembering the names of them because I don't use them much, I have to say. But you can always look me up at FIU. I'm chairperson there, and I definitely have a website.
That's what's up. And, thank you for joining the show. And if you have to drop off in the meantime, I get it, but I wanted to make sure we gave you your props in the spotlight.
Sure. I just wanted to say one thing about the exhibit and what people can expect too. When I teach my students, I always tell them that the past was also in color. And sometimes we think of it as black and white. And our exhibit really does bring the beauty of the colors from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s into relief. So when you walk in, you're going to be arrested by the beauty of the color of the period.
Definitely. I can attest to that. And Chris, how can people attend? Do they need to register? Tell us all the things that we need to know to get to the exhibit.
Well, the Wolfsonian Museum is located on 10th of Washington in Miami Beach. The exhibit is open Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 6 o'clock, and open later on Fridays. We have a couple of special events coming up. We have a book club. One of the things that we wanted to do when we began to plan for the show is we actually wanted to develop a book club because it's about the book. And so therefore, we want people to engage, have some level of engagement with the actual word. And so we have one of those coming up. All of that is on the website at the Wolfsonian, wolfsonian.org.
Got it. And guys, if you're looking at the screen, you can see it there as well. And I'm also going to put on the screen how you can get to more information about the exhibit. So, Chris, is it free to attend?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's free for Florida residents, which I'm sure will be a good amount of your listeners and watchers. So, yeah.
And on Friday nights, it is free.
Friday nights, it is free.
Friday night. So you can bring, you can have a nice cheap date on a Friday night, come down to the beach, you know what I'm saying? And chill out and really engage with this art in these books. I do want to say one thing. One of the things in curating a show like this is you get to learn so much more about these artists and these writers. I'm sure even Shawn, who knows a lot about many of these writers, may have learned even more about about them. And one of the things that really was something I didn't really consider was one particular writer, James Weldon Johnson.
Mm.
We know James Weldon Johnson as the person who wrote the lyrics to Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was a collaboration between him and his brother who wrote the music. And I knew that James Weldon Johnson was, of course, a writer and as well as an activist, but I had no idea that he was a diplomat.
Wow.
I had no idea he had a connection with Teddy Roosevelt. He was appointed a consul in Venezuela, lived there, I believe there, and Colombia. I had no idea he wrote, some of his seminal texts while he was serving over there. I was unaware that he was the first Black man to sit for the Florida bar.
Wow.
So he was such a dynamic figure that although he's always been elevated within the context of the Harlem Renaissance, he needs to be raised up even at a more higher level because he was truly a man for all seasons, as they say, and he was a Floridian.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Does he have a connection to Florida Memorial University?
Yes, him and his brother taught at a university in Jacksonville, which later became Florida Memorial University. And then we also have this deep connection with other principal figures of the Harlem Renaissance that were Floridians, including Zora Neale Hurston and Augusta Savage. These were artists and writers and sculptors of the first rank that happen to be from Florida. So there's a connection with Florida that's pretty outstanding. So there's a lot of nooks and crannies in the show. I mean, we've been able to have all sorts of groups of people come through and they really enjoy it. And so we don't want something as substantial as this that's reflecting back on African-American history and culture to not be seen by as many people who look like us. And not just for the enjoyment of the tourists who are on Miami Beach who are being benefited, and we welcome them as well. But we really need people, particularly the audience that you reach out to really take the time and see this, because as someone who is embedded to some degree in the art community here, I have an art gallery in Overtown, the historic Ward Rooming House Gallery. I can tell you that I've never seen a show like this. I've never seen a historic show of Black art here in South Florida, going back to the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Wow.
I've only seen one show down here that goes back even to the 60s. And that was a few years ago over at North Miami Museum. But I've never seen a substantive show down here that goes that far back and making us aware of the amazing visual artists that existed during that time period. So we need to run out and see this.
Yes. And Dr. Shawn, is there anything you want to add to that?
It's hard to add to it, but I'll say this one thing. One reason why we are so excited about this exhibit is, of course, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Harlem Renaissance, this entire decade. And one of the things we've been telling people again is to think about the fact that 100 years wasn't that long ago, right? And this transformation of life, arts, and culture is with us in this exhibit. So please come out and check it out.
No, definitely. And I didn't even think about the 100-year anniversary of it. Like, that sounds wild to me, because some people have grandparents that were born in the 1920s.
Exactly.
That connection, is still there. Yes. Chris, before you go again, I would want you to let people know, like, how long the exhibit runs, the hours of operation, where, all of those things.
Yeah, so the Wolfsonian Museum, which is located at 10th and Washington, is guest curated by Christopher Norwood, myself, and Shawn Christian served as the curatorial consultant. We have several organizations that contributed artwork for this, including the Norwood collection. So we have artwork that I loaned for the show. We also have the Aaron Douglas family, courtesy of the Niamdi Gallery here in Miami. We have the Kinkilaba House Gallery in New York City that loaned several pieces to the show. We have Florida Memorial University that loaned several pieces to the show, as well as Fisk University, Beth DeWoody, and the Norton Museum in Palm Beach County. So this was a partnership. You could not show these paintings from this time period without engaging historically Black colleges and universities, because they were some of the few places that showed this work, that purchased this work, that advocated for these artists. So it's a collaboration with all these institutions, including 2 HBCUs. The show is up until late June. It's open from 10 to 6 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday, and late on Fridays.
Nice. And guys, go over to the Wolfsonian.org, hit under their exhibits tab. You'll see the information for everything, and make sure you go experience it. It's a good time. Like Chris said, I don't like to say cheap. I like to say, inexpensive, a good vibe of a day, but honestly, we spent like at least like 2 hours with you when we did the tour with Alexis and Arnisha. So it's a good time, and you learn a lot, and it's something for us. And you can feel the spirit of the ancestors there. So I think everybody watching this needs to go and tell a friend and come by.
Yes. And Janey, if anybody has a large group, they please get in contact with you, and if Shawn and I are available, I'm sure we would love to give people tours, VIP treatment.
Absolutely.
Come on now, hey, we like the VIP treatment. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on today. We had to muscle through some tech issues, but that's how it goes when you're live and you're doing things. But guys, I appreciate you taking the time, breaking this history down. We need to know this, especially Black millennials, Black Gen Zers. We need to know our history. And I thank you guys for putting this together for us. Hilo News family, let's go and support this. Like they said, go to the Wolfsonian.org or go to Hampton Art Lovers social media pages to get more information. Get Dr. Shawn's book, because he's giving you all the things in there as well.
Appreciate
and guys, I just want to thank you again for coming on the show, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.